This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. My name is Angelica Slinska. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Lorraine Cara, who is a nursery manager. Thank you very much, Lorraine, for joining on the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for letting me be on here. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's really great to have you on. So we're talking about an important topic that you suggested, and it's all around psychological safety in the early years and addressing manager burnout through diversity, equality, inclusion, and belonging. So, Lorraine, it's great that you are open to share your experience of dealing with burnout as a Black nursery manager. It's really important to discuss that context and not kind of see burnout as, everyone experiences it in the same way. So I think what we'll begin with is defining burnout, because it's something that many people go through, particularly in demanding careers or family circumstances. And we use the term burnout a lot. But what does it mean?
So I feel, and burnout is like a state of emotional and physical, mental exhaustion. It's like and it's for a long period of time. So it doesn't just happen one day that you're feeling all of these feelings. It's a gradual process, and it's caused by prolonged or excessive stress, which often is related to like work or caregiving. So, for myself, I'm a mom and I work full time. So that two combinations can prolong that whole excessive workload and stress. And it makes you feel really overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet consistent demands. So I mean, you could still be able to manage them, but you do struggle in trying to manage all of those demands, and it just becomes really draining. And for me, I found that I work in a nursery, so it's bound to be, you're going to catch sicknesses, but I was constantly feeling ill and I was constantly tired, like that, yet I can't sleep because I'm just constantly thinking about the amount of work and responsibilities that I have. So that was just adding more exhaustion to my whole situation. So that is kind of how I would explain burnout.
Yeah, and it's important to consider the fact that it is, like you mentioned, emotional and physical. It's not just one or the other, and also prolonged. Like you said, it's not just you're feeling exhausted because you've had a really tough week, and then you kind of have a little break and you set yourself back on track again. Actually, it just is constant and it's ongoing, and it feels like there's no end to it. And what I've experienced myself for the first time in the last 2 years is like these kind of what I call as burnout cycles. You kind of like go through burnout stages and you think, so okay, I'm kind of getting out of this. I've had a bit of a break, but then you just get back straight into that feeling of burnout, and it never kind of seems to end or stop. So that, I think, is a really difficult thing. And yeah, perhaps we can kind of discuss that a bit more in detail once we look at kind of spotting the signs. But let's go on to your experience of burnout as a Black leader. So let's kind of, I guess, initially discuss why it's important to take into consideration race and skin color. Not just expect everyone to be prone to and affected by burnout in exactly the same way.
For me, I think why I think it's important to look at it from like a Black perspective is because we are not, as a culture, we are not pro to admitting that we are experiencing a kind of weakness or an area that we need support in, because we have this feeling that we have to always perform, we have to always come 100%, and we can never have a weak moment because everyone is watching us, and there's that whole fear and bias that I'm not actually meant to be in this position. So we're always trying to prove our worth, trying to prove that, hey, I know what I'm doing. I got this. I'm meant to be. And through that is when we find it's so difficult to say, hi, I need some help. I am actually overwhelmed and I cannot cope with the demands. And I also find that in most spaces where there is Black people and Black women in particular, we always trying to hold the world on our shoulders. So we hold in all these responsibilities, motherhood, leadership, your friendship, looking after your family. As someone that's born in Zimbabwe, and the oldest child, it is the responsibility of us to be responsible for all your family's needs, regardless of how old they are. You are still the eldest child. So I have all of these expectations on top of my job. And and
Mm.
you I couldn't say I need help. And the fear of being reprimanded or even losing my job it's quite a scary thing. And so I wouldn't speak up. I need help. And that is what we need to, as companies, we need to be mindful of that and hopefully find support mechanism that I can feel like I have a space that I can actually talk to you and say, I'm having a hard time, and you can come in and support me. And I don't have to fear reprimandments or anything bad happening from me speaking up that I need help. So, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so I guess, as you mentioned, there's like a lot of pressure to prove yourself, and there's that feeling of imposter syndrome. And I know that people have before, when I've been talking about this similar topic, whether it is about burnout or anything else that Black or brown people are experiencing, there have been people who have said, well, actually, everyone experiences these things and everyone can have different levels of experiencing them things. So, for instance, when you mentioned you are, for instance, the oldest child, and they can say, well, I've felt the same too. And it's not about the color of your skin and we're making it about race. But actually, it's very important to not only see those differences in terms of, yes, you can have different circumstances in family and in all sorts of things, but also there are differences and different experiences and different stigma associated to race and skin color as well.
Yeah.
And it is so important to be aware of that. And I guess it comes from things obviously around racism and particularly also less Black people historically and still now. I guess we're battling with that problem of being in less Black people being in leadership positions. So
Yeah.
there's all of that to overcome, isn't there? And it's, again, I say historical, but then we're still coming out of that and we're still experiencing those issues, even if people are not explicitly racist or even if people mean well, it's still there, that lack of awareness potentially or that like subconscious bias.
It is honestly is still there, and I think you might not be racist, and you try and hard not to be, but in certain times you could be that just unconsciously
Mhm.
racist. There's like, downplaying someone's experience or, saying things like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know, you're not taking accountability for your part in what has caused me to feel this way. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for how I'm feeling, but I'm asking you to take accountability. So was this support put in place, or you just assume that, well, she's Black and she's strong, she's got this, like those kind of things. And again, it's important for us, especially in the Black community, to speak up and like to make this less of a burden and more of a way for us to open up those gates so that we can get that support and not feel so alone. And again, it will be important for us to do that in order for us to break barriers, but also companies to then be able to support us. So this is why I wanted to share this whole aspect, because if we don't speak up about it, it will continue just being in there, and it will be a systematic problem that will never be sorted out because we are not speaking up about it. And I know there might be support out there, but I feel like sometimes it's really just on a superficial level and it's not really meeting my needs. So it's like making sure that like our policies are actually, if we're saying we have a well-being policy and we care about our staff well-being, when I speak up and say I need help, are you actually going to go with that policy or just, follow your other policies because I've broken 10,000 other rules that you thought I didn't do? But are you actually going to go and deep diving into your well-being and actually use that well-being policy to help me. Whether it's just extra support, a time away from work, and not like 1 week, because you can't really fix those things in 1 week. You really need time to rest, to reevaluate all the things that are important to you, and then, address that burnout. So I think it's going to be a very big challenge for everyone to be able to kind of sort this out and stop it from happening, or not stop it, but prevent, put prevention in place that allows that movement and that room for people to grow, but also to heal.
Mm-hmm. So I guess preventative measures in place to stop burning from happening, to see it, notice it earlier, which is something that we can discuss a little bit in more detail, but also to make sure that like people feel comfortable to open up, and they're not going to be met with tokenistic kind of gestures that seem like they don't actually mean anything, or maybe with leaders above them kind of seeing it as almost like it's difficult because we're kind of talking about here being treated differently. There's a negative in being treated differently when we talk about, race, of course, in terms of racism. But then at the same time, we don't want to be treated as the same as everyone else because, and I say we, so different kind of
Yeah.
different groups of people. But here, if you're talking about, yourself and the Black community, you don't want to be treated the same because there are different challenges that you are facing. So you do need to be treated differently in terms of recognizing that. That's the first step. It's that whole thing. And I've mentioned it so much recently, especially it's come up in conversations even more, I guess maybe post like Black History Month in October. The whole concept of I don't see color. And so many people do mean well by that. But actually, it's not a positive, because you do need to recognize those differences in order to be able to then support groups of people and individuals in the right way. And interestingly as well, what you mentioned there about kind of looking at race in a positive way can sometimes be an issue in terms of, you said, oh, she's Black, she's got this. Black people are always on it. They've got it. They get on with it. But actually, that is then neglecting the fact that you might be struggling and there might be extra struggles on top that a white person, a white leader may not even consider.
I would say from like growing up, I've always known, like, my parents as well, they would say, when you are at work, you have to work 10 times harder than everybody else. And that is something that is so inbred in our community, that I have to be the best so that, number one, I keep my job, because we need this job to be able to provide for our family. So you have to be the best. You have to give 100%. You just have to do everything to the point that, you done the most that you could do on that day. And I think those kind of struggles is where what leads to that burnout. If you're trying to do everything on your own and pushing, it's not good. And I think, how would I say? I would say, like, advocating for mental health within a workspace, but really targeting the Black community, because we don't speak about mental health, and we're not encouraged to go and speak to speech like therapists or anything like that. It's not really, we'll go to the hairdresser or to barber, and that's where we'll share our experiences all with our friends. But I feel like we need to have those spaces that we can have that, and even like having like spaces where you can be challenged, spaces where you are safe to admit mistakes, which I think will help lessen that fear and that stigma of that judgment. So I think that's kind of what we really need to be facing, is that whole judgment
Mm-hmm.
of, we really want to move away from that and have spaces that are really open and safe. So, that I think companies need to have those kind of spaces.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of those spaces that are not just the usual like formal spaces of an office and a meeting room, and if there's an issue, you go to your manager or HR and you really seriously sit down and talk about this, as if it's almost like almost, an issue, or then beginning to be almost like a disciplinary or something like that. The things that you talk about in terms of, it's really interesting how you mentioned that Black people are not encouraged to, and then therefore not likely to go to therapy and counseling and things like that. It's just not something that is natural, is not kind of like part of the culture. It's not the done thing, and all these things associated with that, and accessing these services and support. But when you mention going to the hairdressers or barbers and things like that, actually that is all about community, isn't it? And it's about, these spaces are safe for you. So I think it's about recognizing that initially, and seeing that as that is a safe space and a space for support. And then how do we almost replicate that in workplaces as well? How do we make sure that there are spaces that are more informal, that can provide that level of support, where there's open dialogue, communication, and like you say, you're not feeling judged there?
I think we could start with like having a mentorship program. It's a safe space. I'm not being judged. I have this mentor that I can look up to that has experienced what I've experienced, or is going through something similar to me, or knows about my experiences, and they are there to be for those like groups that are underrepresented in leadership, which is something key. And I think for me as well, like I'm looking onto LinkedIn and I am connecting with leaders that inspire me, and they're not all in like early years, they're from different sectors, but there's something that resonates with me on what they are doing, how they are expressing themselves. And I think some of them may come across to another group of people as quite aggressive, offensive, but actually the message and the content is a lived experience of the Black community, and they're just sharing out those experiences. So it resonates quite quickly with me and deeply. And so I'm like looking at them and I'm taking them as kind of like my mentors. Because I'm learning from them and I'm feeling like I can see myself, or I have experienced that. And now someone has given me the words to articulate what I was feeling. So I may have had experience of this, but I did not know that that is what it was called. And I was like, and I'm like, that is what I was going through, but I had no word placements. And I think the education element, that mentorship, it does help give you that knowledge. And then through those programs and those experiences, you are able to then feel more confident to ask for help, or to know where to go for help. So I think that's a key thing. So having those in your companies, that mentorship program that represents all the diverse groups in within your company, it will help. So I'm not saying that you can't just have a white person doing the mental health program and it won't work. It could work, but having someone that looks and sounds like me may make that difference in someone coming and saying, actually, I'm having a really hard time. I want to talk about this. Or I want to ask, are there any steps that I could take to support me? I think that would help a lot.
And that makes so much sense, because we always talk about this in terms of the children in our care. And we say, there needs to be representative resources, for instance, pictures, books, everything in the classroom, where children feel like they belong because they can see pictures of other children that look like themselves, or, adults in the room that look like them and resemble their communities and families. So they feel like they are more comfortable and belong. And it is exactly the same for adults. We just don't necessarily kind of pinpoint on that and see it in that way. It totally makes sense if there are people who might be thinking, I don't understand the significance of this. I would feel comfortable, and maybe as a white person going to a Black person, I don't understand the relevance. Actually, if we think about this, for instance, for all those white people who are listening and watching, you might think, if you are of a, I don't know, let's say religious belief, for instance, and you may go to someone and open up about something, and maybe your struggles or maybe your beliefs, and they are atheist and they just don't believe in religion at all, don't follow, you might feel like you're constantly kind of being judged, and you you're misunderstood and you don't feel comfortable opening up. But actually, if you go to someone with, similar beliefs, backgrounds, religion, whatever it is, you feel like there's that almost like connection straight away, or at least that understanding that they know where you're at, what you're feeling, why you're thinking certain things, maybe because they've experienced similar things. So it's like that, isn't it, in terms of, and putting, I guess, as white people, putting ourselves in your shoes and thinking how would we feel, if yeah, we were in that kind of situation, is really difficult because we can never understand truly until we've had that lived experience, and we never will have the same lived experience as someone else. But there's still a lot we can do to get closer and try that out. And just wanted to mention, I love that you talk about being, so with the mentorship kind of programs, you're equipped with the tools then to help you understand yourself, explain what you're going through, being equipped with that language, like you were saying, and then equipped with the tools to then ask for help as well. So there's so much value in all of that.
I mean, we undervalue mentorship, and we do say, like, as leaders, we coach and we mentor our colleagues, but I know that we don't give enough time to that. So, I might be coaching you on how to do your, like, a task or a job, but
Mm.
you. And I was watching a movie and on Netflix, and it's a Christian-based movie, and the one of the characters is a business owner, and he made it his own business to mentor this young man. And so before he starts work, he asked him, "Can you give me 2 hours of your day before you go to work so that I can mentor you, so that I can teach you and develop you?" And the young boy is like a teenage boy, and he's like, "Yeah, all right, whatever. I just want to get paid." But I think throughout that mentorship and that time spent with this older person, experienced person that has had all these life experiences, he was able to learn and, rethink about where he wants to go and, like, where he sees himself, and also understand the feelings that he was going through. So there was intellectual connection, but also an emotional connection. And I think when we are as leaders, we need to also remember that we are dealing with people and they do have feelings. So we need to look at them holistically. And it's not just about, I know we have to get our job, we have to do all the things that we need to meet all the expectations of the job, but also we need to remember that we are working with people and we need to meet their needs too. So juggling those two things when you are a leader, it's going to be a challenge, but it is a must in order to, I guess, again, retain your team and retain your staff. If I actually truly feel that I belong and I am valued in the space, and that you actually see me as a person, not just as someone that works here or someone that can be easily disposable. I'm actually a valued member of this team, and that my input is important. It keeps the machine going. I'm more likely wanting to come back and keep on doing the things that I know I can do, and help the company. But I feel like if someone says to you, "I'm going through burnout," and your immediate reaction is, go in, throw all these policies and don't give them actual support, I'm not going to be committed to you anymore, because you haven't really looked at me as a person and valued my safety. And I know it's Maslow's hierarchy, that we always look at, and in businesses, and there's a safety element that it is so important. We do that for the children, like we look at them, we make sure that they are safe. We should look at our staff that way and make sure that they are safe. It's not just about paying their bills and stuff. Fine, we do need the paycheck, that's why we're here, but being safe, feeling like we belong, um feeling like we won't experience bullying, harassment, all of those things is really crucial. We may say, "Oh, we're adults, we don't need to belong." But every single one of us, when we go into a new space, we always look for someone to look, give us eye contact so we can make that moment and connect and then have someone to sit next to or someone that we can talk to. And if you go and you don't have anyone, no matter what the event is teaching you or talking about, you actually feeling so insecure because no one connected with you. It's really important. And I think that is what we need in a workspace, just that reminder that we have targets, we have things that we want, but we also have people and they have needs and we need to meet those needs. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally resonate with so many things that you said there, I guess on a personal level, but also in terms of trying to understand your experiences and perspectives as well. And I guess firstly, it's about thinking that a lot of companies are businesses, and they need to think of that they're in the business of people. Even if they are selling a product at the end of the day, for example, then there's still people that they're working with, whether it's their customers or their employees. It's so important that everything is about relationships and humans first and foremost. But then if we think about early years, it is entirely about people, both little people and older people, the families and obviously your team. And if your team are not feeling like they belong and they're not feeling great in this space, how are they going to be able to support children and families in feeling in a good place and like they belong? So I guess it's thinking about the bigger picture and what are we achieving here. Is this a space that people want to be part of, people want to come here? And like you said, not just thinking this person is experiencing burnout or something else and what does our policy state, and then we're going to carry out those actions in almost like a very cold, harsh way. It's about thinking, what does this human in front of me need? What are they feeling? It's not just we need to put these things in place. Yes, okay, there may be things to put in place to support them and give them the time off or whatever it is that is, in your policies and procedures. But the first and foremost thing needs to be making them feel heard and understood and listened to, because it's their emotions that you are kind of dealing with and hearing and they're expressing to you. And I always say it's kind of like, if there's an issue, it's the emotions that need to be dealt with first, whether it is to support that person or at least calm them down so then you can get to wherever you need to be. It's the human, the emotions that need to be looked at. And then we kind of make sure that person feels like they're heard. And then we're like, okay, now what can we do about this practically? How can we actually support you in terms of practical steps moving forward? Yeah. And then the point around being at, for instance, an event or a new space that you're walking into, we do naturally, I think, so I mentioned this earlier in terms of children, didn't I, in terms of them feeling like they belong and having adults in the room that look like them. But also naturally as humans we do gravitate towards people who look like us, who seem like there's some kind of connection there, that and it could be anything, but of course skin color is the biggest thing. And yeah, just being able to relate to someone. And that's why I think the points that you made about mentorship are very, very important. And it is all about making sure that those, you mentioned underrepresented groups, the, I guess, groups that are maybe minority in your business, and especially in leadership as well, positions, do they have someone to go to? Because we always talk about leaders being quite lonely actually and isolated, because you might be at the top and you're supporting everyone else, but how do you yourself get that support?
I think again with that, when it comes to leadership, and if a certain group is really underrepresented in that leadership space, me coming in, I'm looking to see, okay, how are they treating the other Black leader within the space? That informs me on what my expectations will be. So, you may think that we are not paying attention, but we are actually looking and we're learning. Like, so if you know, I hear that, you've mistreated this Black leader, or they're not getting all the opportunities that we could be getting because, we're Black, and we're not getting those major promotions or recognition within the company. I already know where my place is going to be. And I'm already now looking for somewhere else to go where I will be appreciated, where they're going to value me. And someone was, I think it was a post on LinkedIn as well about a HR. She was just commenting um, about how it is important for HR to be also thinking about the people. So, like, usually when people think of HR, they always think that they're just there for the best benefit of the company and not really for you as a person that works there. So, it's important that, we break those barriers and the stigma about HR and not being there to support people. So, I know there's going to be a lot of work happening all over the world to change those things, but it's just that recognition that, who is actually here to support me? Who can I actually go to that actually is listening to me as a person, that's going to value what I'm saying, that's going to take, you know, my feedback. So we look at in companies having that open feedback circle where everyone can bring out their voice and say, I think you actually should do this. And companies not taking offense to it, but actually valuing that and then maybe reflecting on it and then trying to put it into place. That makes easier for me as a Black person to want to communicate how I'm feeling or make changes or suggest ways to improve something. Yes, so that would be key.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with an exciting announcement. The Voice of Early Childhood Conference is back again, and it will be held on 8th of February 2025. I'm really excited to share with you all the fantastic speakers and their talks. So first up, we have Matt Baller presenting the morning keynote on proactively supporting children's mental health. Then we have 3 workshops for you to choose from out of a choice of 9 different topics and a variety of speakers. So on the leadership strand, we have Yinka Ognusi, cultivating a critical approach, targeting social justice and anti-racism. We also have Claudia Cicera and Stuart Cloak, recruiting a diverse workforce and investing in staff retention. And we have Wendy Ratcliffe, what to expect on your inspection day. And then we have our practice and parents strand. We have Dr. Sue Allingham speaking on a neuroscientific lens on the learning environment. We also have Stephanie Warrender, early literacy through song drawing. And we have Olivia Corbin-Phillip, using stories to build confidence and improve RSC. We then have our final strand, which is practice focused. From Charmaine Leach, we've got Inclusive Beginnings, Nurturing Every Child with SEND. We have Jan Dubil, Creating Your Own Curriculum. And we have Dr. Mona Saka, Kayla Halls, and Dr. Sarah Benetti on big questions in the baby room. And then last but not least, we have Ben Kingston Hughes presenting our closing keynote all around the essential neuroscience of humor and laughter. So it's a packed agenda with lots of talks to choose from. So make sure that you grab your tickets. The link with full conference info is in this episode description. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Yeah, it's all about having that, like you say, open dialogue, open communication, and kind of like flattening the hierarchy as well, isn't it? In terms of everyone feeling like they do have a voice and their voice is heard, but also they can have a say, and not just ignored because they're in a position that may be a lot kind of lower down than the leadership positions. And I think this relates to a point that you were making earlier about what can Black people do as well, and it's all about that. There's 2 sides to this, there's the, well, I guess quite bluntly, the white people and the Black people, and actually then if we're looking at the business and the individual, for instance, in the same way, what can Black people do to ensure that they try and reach out for support? How can they see things differently? I guess there's issues within the Black community, like you say, in terms of you were saying we're not necessarily kind of open to support and therapy and seeking that advice and help and all of these things. And then thinking, okay, who, like you just said with HR, who's there that is there to support us? And it's difficult because then you're grappling with all those stigmas and that mistrust that you may already have. but it is, there's still steps that can be made in terms of thinking, okay, that not everyone may treat me the same way, and I need to keep trying, and
Yeah.
think change has been happening, and it's difficult, but there are things that can be done. And of course, on the other side as well, there's a lot that can be done in terms of breaking those barriers, stigmas, and the way that we kind of respond and treat people. So there's always things that can be done both sides, and I like that you are really clear about that. And we're talking about everything from such a practical way as well as looking at the emotional side of things.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot that on my own, reflecting on my own experience, there was lots of things that I could have done to avoid reaching that final burnout. So I have taken accountability for my own, failures in that process. But I just feel like if I had felt secure enough, maybe I would have been able to reach out more. But because I haven't seen anyone else going through what I'm going through, because maybe no one's talking about it, and it's not known that people actually can experience this, that this is an actual thing, and I know that maybe it has been out there, but I never had that knowledge about it. And also, I never looked at it from a Black perspective. So, and it was quite eye-opening to understand and then to be able to put a name what I was feeling. So I know I was tired, I was emotional, I was, exhausted, and I was having sleep apnea. I couldn't sleep. I know what I was feeling, and I would go to the doctor and they would give me sleeping tablets, and I was having one thing that I remember having a lot was the headaches, the consistent headaches and migraines that were just consistent. And I was taking all kinds of paracetamols, and my doctor's giving me all kinds of medicine, but it wasn't actually putting a name to what I was feeling. And then when I finally understood that, okay, this is actually called burnout, and this is what I'm experiencing, it kind of gave me a relief. And I was like, okay, so I know now what I'm going through, and then how to now identify it, for later. I now know. I'm like, okay, I understand. So it was important for me to speak out about it, because I know that there's probably someone experiencing this and not sure that that is what they're going through. And it will be very good then to have these steps in place to identify burnout before it goes too far, and then put those support mechanism in place to help your staff be able to cope with that before it finally is too late, because burnout gets us a place where it's already too late. Like I- I've
Mm.
I have nothing left to give. So before we get to that point, let's put these steps into place,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like you say, all these things that you are kind of dealing with, and getting the kind of treatment for that, you're treating the symptoms and not the underlying cause. So then when you understand what you're experiencing, like you say, put a name to it, what it is, you're clear on that. There's that sense of relief that you mentioned, but there's also then that understanding of how you can seek support, what you can ask for, what you might be able to do. So let's go on to kind of the final bit in terms of how do we spot burnout. I guess there's two things there. Well, spotting it early for both yourself and your team as a leader. So yeah, how would we, maybe let's start with spotting burnout as yourself.
I would say what it looked like for myself, it was, as I was saying, it was physical, mental, and emotional. My well-being was just not there, and it involved constant fatigue, frequent illnesses, and frequent illness in an earlier sector and a nursery. We know that there's bugs and all, but it was more than that. I was consistently feeling ill and just always having something wrong with me, and then the disrupted sleep patterns really had a huge impact. Like I would be up, my mind will just be racing through things that I haven't done and things that I need to do just constantly. So there's no sleep. And then I wake up and then I have to do a whole 40-hour shift again, not having that enough rest. So it was not producing healthy habits. I was having mood swings, and even at home, I know my mood swings were really like erratic. Like I'll just be 1 minute fine, the next minute I'm annoyed, the next minute I'm crying. So it was a lot of emotional outbursts that I was feeling, and I was feeling quite detached from my family, from work. I had this whole point where I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. Um, and then I was having these really unhealthy habits. So I was eating a lot of sugary stuff, and I know this. I remember at one time, there's these fudge sweets from Amazon. I mean, not Amazon, from Tesco, little fudge. Yeah, delicious. I one whole box before 9 o'clock. I have finished a box. By 12 o'clock, I have eaten 4 boxes of those fudge sweets. And it was getting so bad that I had to, just to give me that energy, because I'm not a coffee drinker. Coffee makes me fall asleep. So I had sugar. Sugar was my woohoo, my best friend.
Yeah.
It wasn't helping me, because then now, like, I'm finding I'm having loads of breakouts. I'm really tired, and I have put on weight because of the sugar and that unhealthy element, because I was not addressing what was really happening to me, and I did not have no idea. And I was having difficulty in focusing, like reduced productivity. So I wasn't really as productive as I wanted to be. And then I was just it, and that was increasing my irritability. That I was just constantly irritable. And then I had, as I said, I had headaches, and I was getting muscle tensions, loads of muscle issues. I remember I had to wear a brace to support my back, and knee knee braces, which are still in my drawer. But I think that was
Mhm.
the water retention. Like my knees, my feet were getting swollen, and it was just a lot of things that were just happening. And I just was thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me, like something medically I'm not well. I have broken something, I pulled some. But it was all like the symptoms of burnout, and I was diagnosing them with other things throughout the time. And then I think that was the signs of my burnout. But then I want to just talk about why now is it important to identify burnout from in yourself, in your colleagues. It will help early intervention. So I think if I got that support early, it wouldn't have went so bad down the line. And then
Mhm.
out early allows timely action. So then if I had said, oh, I'm experiencing burnout, possibly my line managers could have put things in place to support me, and then to avoid it getting worse and worsening the effects of burnout. Um, I think it ensures a long-term well-being for leaders and our team. So if I'm not really doing well myself, it does have an impact on my team and how I lead them. And also, it sends a message to them that it's okay to work while you are sick. It's okay to just push on. And it's giving that culture, it's a toxic culture where when you're sick, that shows you dedicated to your job because you are here. And that's what I was doing. But it's not dedication, it's actually damaging to yourself and to your team to be continually at work when you are unwell and you need to take that rest break. So it's important to um, change from that working while I'm sick is good for my company. No, rather than say no, take the break, get yourself better, because that now makes you better to come back to work with renewed energy and a renewed mind, and you'll then perform better. So I think changing that mentality to when you are sick, say I'm sick, I need a rest day, even if it's not symptoms of cold and flu, but actually I'm having a day where I'm feeling really down and really tired. I need I need this day to rest. That should be allowed as a sick day. And I didn't ever think that I can call in and say, well, I'm feeling low today and I'm feeling tired, so I need a day off. I never did that because I didn't think that was a sick. That's not sick. So for me, it's now having that, knowing that, and being able to confidently say to my employer that, look, I am sick, I'm tired today. I don't feel like I could give 100%. I'm emotionally not there. And that they should be able to say to me, well, yeah, take that day, take the day and take that rest that you need. I think those are important to be able to prevent and to support burnout. And then empathy, and which is quite a huge thing. Like, I think acknowledging burnout in yourself also fosters you to be able to understand burnout towards your team and be empathetic to your team when you understand it yourself as a leader. I over my notes because I don't. And then also just breaking the stigma. So addressing burnout openly. So I feel like what I'm doing right now, sharing my experience as a leader, as a person who has experienced burnout, especially being a Black woman, sharing my experience out there and hoping that it will impact someone within my community, but also in the broader community and in the workplace, that it is okay to challenge mental health stigmas and to be open about it. And then that way, we can then get those supports in place because everyone understands it and it's right out there, and we are not ashamed to say, this is what we have, this is what goes on in our community, we need help. And then that help can come, whether it's in your company, whether it's from outside, whether it's from the NHS, the help will come, and we can start healing ourselves as a community and as a person. And I think, yeah, so some practical steps to avoid burnout for myself was, like, I had to set boundaries between work and my personal life. So I asked for reduced hours. And also, well, we kind of tweaked the hours a bit, and it was a lot more flexible for me. It kind of reduced another burden that was on my mind. How do I manage my home life and my work life? So that was really good. And then prioritizing self-care with regular breaks. I am guilty of never taking a break, and I know this now that wasn't good. It did not help me in the end. So what I started doing was like walking home. So taking the longer route, and it goes through the park, and just that whole time to myself, that like 30 minutes on my own, was really good for me. So leave work on that journey. And when I got home, I was just ready to be for my family. So I did not still have that whole thing about work. I kind of like released everything that was going on in that day. And by the time I opened my door, I now have some energy to, talk to my 5-year-old, because I do have a little 5-year-old running around, and they are so full of energy, and you need to be able to give that to them. So that's helped. And then I'm not going to say I put a lot of exercise, but the walking has helped. And I have found like, I drop my daughter off to school now. And so instead of coming straight home, I just walk a bit longer. I go round so that it gives me an extra time to walk. And I think that has been helping me a lot, and it also gives me time to listen to podcasts because, I think those little self-care things for myself help me. And I'm not going to say I stopped eating a lot of sugar, but I the amount of sugar that I am taking. And I think that has helped me, especially at night with sleeping, because I'm not so hyped up. I can actually go to sleep. And I found that I used to eat a whole like Kit Kat before I go to bed. And it's like, no, you don't need that sugar. You're going to sleep now, because that's where my energy is coming from. So like reducing that to earlier in the day so I can burn it out. By the time I go to sleep, I am more likely to sleep and my mind is turned off. So I think those small things were really good for me. And the next thing would be for me to learn how to delegate responsibilities to lighten the workload. So I was guilty of holding on to um, everything I had to be responsible for because I didn't want it to be done wrong or for it not to get done. So I was just trying to be superwoman. I was trying to do everything. And it turns out that wasn't even working anyway. So, upon reflection, it wasn't working. Trying to do everything by myself did not have the outcomes that I would have liked. So I'm reflecting on that and just understanding that delegating does help reduce that stress on myself and avoid that burnout. And so if I'm seeing team members, like even the room leaders or third in charges or anything like that, overburdening themselves with needing to do everything, I empower them to delegate to others, because then that reduces their workload. So I think that is something that, we need to encourage: empower delegation, empower your staff to know that you know, they can call for help, they can give out some of their responsibilities to someone else. It is good. It is actually very good for you. And then I think that was for myself, and at the end, for my team. But when I think about the team, again, I think of promoting a culture of open communication about workload. So I think if my line manager had sat down with me and really spoke about my workload and the expectations and the support that I needed, I would not have found myself facing burnout, because we really have addressed the issues of what I'm doing within my day, and how can I share this responsibility with other people. So I think it does really help if we have that open communication, and we have that culture of, we can openly talk about what we're experiencing and what's too much and what I can physically take on, and then offer mental health resources. So I don't think, I mean, there was like a mental health, and you could do the training, but it wasn't like really targeted. It wasn't really, shown a lot. And it was, really emphasized during mental health week or mental health that period, but it's not every day. It's not an everyday information given to you, or someone to go to. It's not an everyday, and it should
Mm.
be on that mental health week that, whoa, look at us, we do all this mental health stuff, but every other day it's not there. When I really need it, it's nowhere to be found. I think it has to be a lived culture that happens every single day, that we talking to people, that we checking in with people, how's your day going? Maybe it's an hour before close down of the nursery, whatever it is, give your managers a call. Hey, how was your day? Like, how did it go? How was this? What do you think worked or didn't work? Those kind of things do help with your mental health, because it's a way for me to de-stress out what I've been experiencing through the day. And like I said, I wasn't doing that. So now when I'm doing that walk going home, that was my way of communicating to myself on what was
Mm.
going, had someone else to communicate with, maybe that would have also been giving a different perspective to how I can improve the next day or something like that, or a step that I could have tried to avoid, anything that didn't go so well. But then also celebrating small little wins as well, because what part of burnout that we may not talk about is that whole self blame and that
Mm.
negative put on myself, and I think other people may do that. Uh, you cannot see anything positive. All I could see was the negative, and that was building to my anxiety and then to my overeating. So I think those will be really key. Talking about it and having, in my nursery, in the children's toilets, they have affirmations on the little
Mm.
mirrors. Maybe having that in my staff toilets would have helped me as well to go into there and say something positive, especially if I'm experiencing a day where I've faced loads of challenges and I felt like a failure. Then going into that space and saying, well, I'm confident, I'm strong, I can do this. It could have helped me and also my team, so I'm now, thinking, next time I might do this. So, this me still learning from this experience. Um, and then I would say ensure like workloads are evenly distributed and achievable to your team as well. And then recognize and reward efforts to boost morale. I think, yeah, there should be a lot of recognition for staff for the small things that they're doing. It's really important. Well done. You helped stop that baby crying, and you stay calm, and, you didn't let that really affect you that much. That was amazing. Tell us about your strategies. How do you do that? Do you want to share that with another colleague who maybe finds it hard? Those small things really help someone, boost their confidence as well, and maybe help open up those communication channels as well. Um, yeah, so those are the signs of burnouts for yourself and
Mhm.
for your, and I think just to look at how you could help someone out of burnout, because now we know what it looks like. If we think about how to help them now come out of burnout, I think it was empathy first. Um, so when the team members underperform, explore the challenges, and instead of taking, a punishment action, think about the support access, providing access to counseling. And again, I was talking about mentorship, or we have the employee assistance program, offering those things to staff members. It will be really good. And then adjusting workloads, maybe offering some flexible time, or flexible time to meeting deadlines, so it's not everything is so urgent, must be done now. Maybe there could be a flexibility within those deadlines, that it could be bite-sized so that the person cannot feel like overwhelmed anymore and kind of be able to do it. And then manageable responsibilities. So look at how we can manage what they're responsible for, and how we can maybe delegate to other people, or postpone something that's not urgent right now, but we could get to it at another time. Those are things that would be very good. But then the most one would be about fostering trust. So really creating an environment that all employees feel safe to discuss their struggles, their challenges, their fears. Everything can be, trusted in that space. And if I come to you and say, well, actually, I'm experiencing difficulty completing this task, you don't take that as ammunition to go and, like punish me later. Like, well, you told me that you could have, I told you this in a space of trust. I'm hoping that you're going to be able to then support me rather than judge me or punish me for that. So I think those are things that people need to, or companies especially need to, need to look into. And as well, leaders just look into that. How can we then support people out of that burnout? And then for as a Black leader, I think navigating the stigma, so the pressure to prove yourself in leadership roles, it can be isolating. So I'm thinking, look for other leaders that you can, mirror or copy. Reach out to them. There's many people out there that don't mind, sharing their expertise, their knowledge, and being your mentor. It will be good to have someone to go to talk to. And then equity in practice. I mean, I would say ensuring that diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging policies offer real support, and they're not just some kind of symbolic thing that we have in our file over there to show that we have our DIB policy, we good. No, it should be something that actually lived and breathed, and that people actually feel like they belong. One of my staff members, and it's something small to me, but it was something big for them. Um, the fact that I provided halal meat at the nursery for them to be able to eat, it was something that they were anxious about, because they have been to other nurseries and they never got to eat the food there. And they were always worried about, especially when they had no money, like, what am I going to eat today?
Mhm.
And be able to get something to eat. So that anxiety, again, is really very pressurable. So me providing this, the staff member said, it took out a weight from me, knowing that when I come here, I belong and the food is safe for me. So for me, that small thing allowed my staff member to feel like they belonged. So it's just those small things that we need to put into place and just be mindful of, that allows me to feel like I belong within the space. And it's quite an important thing, and then kind of like breaking barriers. So advocate for mental health resources, especially for Black communities. We need to advocate for that. We need to talk about it. We need to highlight that it's an actual thing, that as a Black community, we go through this. As a Black woman, I have gone through this. And then what is there out there that can help me? I went to Mind's website and I was just reading and looking at the support that they have, and the leaflets and the exercise tips that they have. Those all things that helped me, I'm not saying I'm healed. I'm going through my journey and I'm trying to heal myself, but there's there's things that I'm doing and there's people that I'm looking up to, listening to, and learning from. So it's all helping me to understand and give a name to the things that I'm going through. So that was really important for me. Um, and then I would talk about challenging stereotypes. So creating spaces to make mistakes and ask for help without fear of judgment. That is a real key thing that I think if any company does put that into place, they would open up such a space that they would have a community of people that really value working for you because they feel safe in that space. You know, um, yeah. So I think if I go to my like takeaways, because we kind
Hmm.
of along. I sort of like burnout is a holistic challenge which affects physical and emotional and professional well-being. Um, Identifying burnout early is critical for sustained leadership, and it will make sure that your leaders don't leave your company, they stay, and then they grow other leaders and they support everyone down, and it just has a really good ripple effect within a company. Um, and then when managers foster empathy and inclusivity to support themselves and their teams, it really helps and it impacts, it supports people coming forward and saying, I need help. Um, for Black leaders, I think it's important that if companies have equitable policies and mentorships that are in place, are very essential in to be make those Black leaders thrive in their roles. So, think about that. Think about your policies. Are they actually equitable? Do they meet everyone? And do we have any way of introducing a mentorship program that everyone can access and be part of? It will be key. And yeah, just think about those elements when you are being a leader, being a manager. So, yes.
There's so many things that you mentioned there, and thank you for summarizing in the key takeaways as well. That's really, really useful. Like I said earlier, I love that we are really here addressing everything in terms of that emotional perspective and that kind of human viewing people as humans, and that's the first thing we need to do. But then at the same time, you have so many practical kind of tips, ideas, things that people can put into place on both sides, like I said earlier. And that is so important because there's so much value in hearing all of this, but then, and that gives you hope, and it makes you feel heard, and it makes you feel that relief of hearing that someone else has gone through this. And I felt that myself in the past, and I felt great about it. And then weeks go on and you're like, but I'm still stuck because I've actually not done anything with this. So those practical tips and points are just so vital. I've got a few things I was just listening to you talk all the way through that, and I just really didn't want to interrupt anything. And I've got some things that I wanted to kind of to point out as well in terms of, so the thing that I was just mentioning, kind of opening up about your mental health, because burnout is a mental health issue, and opening up about your own experience helps so many people around you, just like what you mentioned there in terms of, you hope that this will help people. It's helping me so much because I have been feeling like these burnout cycles, like I mentioned at the start, and I have I'm always kind of going through it. Today I'm kind of feeling a little bit more on it. I think it's because it's my last day at work, and I'm feeling like, it's okay, I'll get through. So I'm a bit more kind of positive. But yeah, like it's always kind of ups and downs and more downs through that burnout. And it helps you feel heard, and you can relate to someone, and if it's helping me so much hearing it as a white person from you, then I can just imagine how much it could help a Black person listening to you who feels the pressure and stigma to not only speak out about this, but maybe even about feeling this way. So, thinking, should I even feel like this? Am I, in
Mm.
quotations, weak? So yeah, just that, making that point of speaking out about your own struggles is so valuable, and it can help so many people with the, like I said, feeling heard, and that it's okay to feel this way, and someone else does, and someone else that looks like me does as well. And the fact that you're not just feeling this way, but you're speaking out about it, so it's okay to speak out about it. And then all the practical tips, there's just so much value in this. So I do really want to thank you for speaking out about your own experience, because it is it is difficult as well, to come to that place of being like, I can speak about this now and I'm going to speak out. And it is something that you're doing that is very actively supporting people, and also kind of actively promoting anti-racism as well, and helping people change the way they are, rather than thinking I didn't get the support and I'm just going to be upset about this. And then the point around one more thing, physical symptoms being more seen as more serious a lot of the time, unfortunately. And most of burnout is mental health related, kind of emotionally, mentally, and then you start to see the physical signs kind of later on. So I think that can be really dangerous. So, we might see a common diagnosis or common recognition of an issue. Then we see that, okay, this is cold and flu symptoms, backache, whatever else. We're kind of seeing this as more serious, both ourselves experiencing it and our managers, for instance. It's more obvious. But then what comes with burnout is anxiety and depression as well, and other kind of symptoms that come along from all these draining feelings. And like you mentioned as well, lack of belonging. So it is something that is very serious, that needs to be considered so much more seriously. And like you mentioned, having those days off if you're feeling something more kind of emotionally, and it can be so much more serious than cold and flu symptoms that are just really common and really evident and obvious. So yeah, just kind of wanted to really capitalize on that. That's such a massive thing. And in all of this, I guess the main thing to take away is that we're talking about burnout, but it's also about the purpose of this is fostering inclusivity, and that those equitable leadership practices in relation to burnout, to well-being and mental health. And that's the biggest kind of focus here to take away from it all. It's not just we've talked about burnout and that's it. There's so much more to consider. So yeah, thank you so much. Like I say, this episode, I've felt heard, and I felt like I can open up more, and I've been taking notes, and I know we've got your article, but I've still been taking more notes from this in terms of what can I do. And some of these things are the things that I already know and people have already told me. But like, when you hear someone say like, I've done this and this has helped me, then I'm like, oh yes, I need to do this. And and there's other things that I've taken away that you've said that are kind of things that I've not considered before as well. And I've read so many articles. I'd be like, how do I get out of burnout? And, Googling things at midnight and being like, this is enough. But yeah, when you hear someone talk about it, that's what makes all the difference.
Honestly, it does. I think just from me listening to people talking about mental health, burnout, all of those things just kind of, started putting pieces together. But then knowing the how to name what I was
Mm.
going, really crucial for me. And then that safety element within a company, within work, was really important for me to kind of put those two together and think, okay, so there's accountability for my side, and there's also accountability for my own leader, manager as well, in terms of how we support burnout and how it looks like in a workplace, and that physiological safety in the workplace. And I know in maybe I'm not up to speed yet of how it works in the UK, but I know in America they are trying to change the law around the safety of work and how employers should take their responsibility of physiological safety at work seriously. So I think it all impacts, and it all plays a role to making sure that people don't feel this way. But there's always these support mechanisms that come into place that help support us, ensure that we are actually meeting the needs of our people and putting the people first. So, yeah, it was really nice to share, and I hope it will help somebody as a way. I got help from other people and listening to pieces and then being able to place what I was going through and what it was called, and really helped me understand, and also then work at making myself healthier and better, so I could then pour out to other people. So I think that is really key to breaking barriers and opening communication, and then making changes that will have a power to our society. And I know if we look at, headlines, we know there's a lot of people dying from depression because it got to a space where they weren't heard and they didn't feel like they belong. So I think burnout can take you to that place. There was a time where I know I didn't even comb my hair for a week. I just wore the same clothes. I was really falling into this depression, and getting out of it was really key to helping me come to a place where I can share and speak about it. So it wasn't easy, and there was a lot of blame and anger, but it's actually I had a part to play in it too. So, reflecting upon that, I think makes you a good leader, but also sharing about that um, and challenging things that are not right. It does help the next generation leaders coming through as well. So
Mhm.
that
That's a really good point. I think that that could be another episode in itself of like what makes a good leader and encompassing all of this. You'll have to come back on. um, so for everyone who is watching and listening, Lorraine's article is on the Voice of Early Childhood website, and there's also some further reading there that you mention as well, and to kind of further, I guess, support. And if those who are kind of interested in reading even more, there's a podcast episode and two articles from Eva Kyriakou Anastasi on Educator Burnout and Leaving Teaching on the Voice of Early Childhood website as well, that are, I think they're almost like 2 years old now. So yeah, interesting kind of to read those too. But yeah, so thank you very much, Lorraine. And like I said, maybe we'll have you on again and to discuss other topics as well.
thank you very much. And it was really great coming on here, and I had a very good time. So thank you.